Ilia Tapuria just told the entire world exactly how this fight ends. First round, 2 minutes, lights out, and the scary part is not the prediction itself. It is a fact that has made that same prediction before against better opponents than Justin Gaethje, and he has been right every single time. That is not confidence. That is a pattern, and patterns in this sport mean everything. This week, Tapuria and Gaethje went face-to-face ahead of their fight at UFC White House. And what happened in that room was not the usual pre-fight theater. Two guys saying aggressive things for the cameras and then going back to their hotels. This was something different. This was two men with genuinely incompatible beliefs about how the same night ends, both of them completely convinced they are correct, and both of them willing to say exactly what they think in front of the entire world. That kind of exchange is rare. And it told us more about this fight than any tale of the tape or statistical breakdown ever could. Gaethje came in with a specific warning, not an emotional one, a strategic one. He said, "The deeper this fight goes, the more dangerous I become. Survive the early exchanges. Get to round 2, get to round 3, and then watch what happens to a man who talked this much when the fight is still going and his predictions have already failed." That is not trash talk. That is Gaethje describing his actual identity as a fighter, a man who has been in the deepest waters this sport produces, and has come out the other side more dangerous than when he went in. His entire career is built on that specific quality, the ability to absorb pressure, to keep moving forward, to turn a fight ugly in a way that neutralizes technical superiority. He has done it to better strikers than Tapuria has faced, and he believes genuinely that if this fight goes past the first round, the entire conversation changes. Tapuria heard all of that and did not flinch for a single second, because in his mind, there is no round 2, there is no round 3, there is only the moment he touches your chin and everything that follows. His exact words were direct and completely without hesitation. "I'm not going to try to do anything. I'm going to do it." That is not a man performing confidence for an audience. That is a man describing a reality he has already lived 3 times at the highest level of the sport, against Max Holloway, against Alexander Volkanovski, against Charles Oliveira. 3 generational fighters, 3 finishes, 0 championship rounds. The pattern is not subtle. It is the most consistent thing in the featherweight division right now. What makes this exchange genuinely interesting, beyond the surface level of 2 elite fighters saying aggressive things to each other, is the specific strategic information Tapuria revealed on camera. He did not hide his game plan. He announced it. He said that if Gaethje moves forward, which is the only thing Gaethje knows how to do at the highest level of his game, that forward pressure is exactly what Tapuria needs. It places the opponent in the position Tapuria has been engineering his entire career, against the cage, in punching range, with no clean exit. He gave Gaethje a specific window, 2 minutes. If you walk into me, I knock you out in 2 minutes. That is an extraordinary claim made with extraordinary calm. And the only rational response to it is to go back and watch how every single one of Tapuria's finishes has actually happened, because they have all happened in almost exactly that way. He also addressed the ground game directly, which matters because Gaethje comes from a decorated wrestling background and has used that credential as part of his pre-fight positioning. Tapuria said that even if Gaethje shoots for a takedown, which he personally considers impossible, he feels 0 pressure from that scenario, not because he is dismissing wrestling as a tool, but because he does not see what Gaethje does with the position once he gets there. He asked the question out loud, what is he going to do on the ground? Hold me? For how long? Tapuria's jiu-jitsu is not a weakness that a wrestling-based takedown game can exploit, and Gaethje, for all his genuine credentials as a collegiate wrestler, has never been a fighter who wins fights on the mat. His wrestling is a threat deterrent, not an offensive weapon. Tapuria knows this, and he is comfortable enough in his analysis to say it publicly. Now here is where the honest assessment of this fight requires separating the promotional narrative from the competitive reality. Because the promotional narrative right now, amplified by Tapuria's undefeated record, his 3 consecutive KO finishes over legends, his physical prime, is that this fight is essentially decided, that Gaethje is a live body being sent in to get finished, so Tapuria can make another statement before the fights that actually define his legacy. And that narrative, while understandable, is dangerously incomplete. Justin Gaethje is not a legend coasting toward retirement on reputation. He is a legitimate elite fighter who represents a specific threat that Tapuria has not faced before. And the people around the sport who understand it at the deepest level have been trying to say that clearly for the past week. Joe Rogan was the most direct about it. He looked at the matchup and said he genuinely cannot understand why people are treating this as a foregone conclusion. He pointed to specific tools. Gaethje's leg kick, which is one of the most punishing in the division, his uppercut, which has ended fights against elite opposition, his size advantage, which is real and consistent. Gaethje will never make 145 pounds, and that size differential inside the cage matters in ways that statistics do not always capture. And then he pointed to something that goes beyond tools. He called Gaethje a savage. Not in the casual way that word gets used in combat sports. In the specific sense that Gaethje, when he is fully committed, does not manage a fight. He destroys it. He makes it ugly. He takes clean technique and turns it into a war of attrition that technical fighters have historically struggled to navigate. His fight against Paddy Pimblett was the clearest recent example. He could have been calculated. He chose to be violent. That choice, made consistently and without hesitation, is what makes him dangerous in a way that film study alone cannot fully prepare you for. Michael Bisping added the layer that matters most from a purely physical standpoint. He acknowledged everything Tapuria brings, the wrestling, the jiu-jitsu, the knockout power, the precision that may be historically unprecedented at this weight class. And then he said something very simple. It only takes one clean shot from Gaethje. One moment where the timing is right, where Tapuria is entering on an angle that Gaethje has been setting up for 3 rounds, where the punch that has ended careers at 155 pounds lands cleanly on a featherweight chin. That is not a scenario that requires Gaethje to outclass Tapuria technically. It requires him to be right once. In a sport where being right once is always possible, dismissing that scenario because of a technical gap is not analysis. It is wishful thinking. Diego Lopez made the comparison that no one else had articulated clearly. He went through Tapuria's previous opponents and identified a specific gap in the data. Volkanovski is elite, but his knockout power at featherweight is not what defines him. Oliveira has genuine power, but has historically been stopped himself, and his defensive vulnerabilities are documented. Holloway hits hard, but has also been on the wrong end of a KO in recent memory. Gaethje is different. Gaethje is a man who has knocked out elite fighters at 155 pounds with single shots. What does that power look like when it lands on featherweight? Nobody knows, because nobody at featherweight has ever stood in front of it before. That is the unknown variable in this fight, and it is the one that makes any version of certainty irresponsible. Michael Chandler, who knows Gaethje personally and has shared training philosophies with him, backed his golf partner in terms that went beyond friendship. He made a structural argument. He said that Tapuria, for all his dominance, has not been dragged into chaos. He has not been in a fight where the game plan dissolved in round 1, and the championship rounds required something beyond precision and preparation. Gaethje's specific gift is his ability to create exactly that environment, to break the structure of a fight, to make it unpredictable, to turn a technical contest into something more primal. If he can do that here, if he can get past the early exchanges and make this a war rather than a clinic, how Tapuria responds to that specific pressure is a question that has not been answered yet. Chandler thinks Gaethje can get that done, and Chandler is not a casual observer. Rafael Fiziev offered the most sobering perspective of the week, not a competitive analysis, a human one. He said he does not want to see this fight happen, not because of competitive concerns, but because of what it could mean for Gaethje physically. Fiziev pointed to the age, nearly 38 years old, the accumulated damage from a career built entirely on violence, and then the specific danger standing in front of Ilia Tapuria in a pure striking exchange for any extended period of time. He said Tapuria can turn the lights off very easily, that the damage Gaethje has absorbed over the course of his career, combined with the specific knockout power Tapuria brings, creates a scenario where the human cost of this fight could be significant. That is a real concern. And it says something important about the level of finishing threat Tapuria represents, that a peer fighter is watching this matchup with genuine unease rather than simple competitive curiosity. And yet, And this is the part that makes this the most compelling fight on the card regardless of outcome. Gaethje has heard all of it. He knows the assessments. He knows the narrative. He knows that the majority of credible voices in the sport believe he is walking into the cage as a significant underdog against a man in his physical prime who has finished 3 consecutive all-time legends. He is choosing to walk in anyway, not because he lacks the information to make a different choice, because he genuinely believes he is the man who ends a streak. That belief, irrational as it may appear on paper, is the same belief that has made Gaethje one of the most compelling fighters of his generation. He has always fought like the outcome was never in doubt, even when every external analysis said otherwise. This fight is no different. Here is where everything comes together. Tapuria is methodical in a way that most champions at his level are not. The Barnhill brothers described his preparation accurately this week. He starts every fight camp by watching his own fights, identify his own vulnerabilities, patching every hole before he ever looks at his opponent. He does not walk into a fight with ego as his primary shield. He walks in with preparation. And that preparation, directed at a Gaethje who has been in the sport long enough that his patterns are documented and his approach is understood, gives Topuria a legitimate basis for the confidence he is displaying. He is not claiming he will win because he is better. He is claiming he will win because he has already figured out exactly how he is going to do it. But Dana White said something this week that deserves the final word here. He said that if Tapuria keeps going at this trajectory, the conversation about greatest of all-time status becomes a real and serious discussion, not a promotional one, a legitimate one. And for that trajectory to continue the way Tapuria wants it to, this fight needs to end the way every other fight in his career has ended. Fast, clean, a statement that makes the next conversation about Islam, about McGregor, about boxing, about legacy, impossible to avoid. The White House card is the platform. Gaethje is the opponent standing between Tapuria and the next chapter. And Tapuria, for his part, has already written the ending. The only question left is whether Justin Gaethje has a different version of the last page.